Last Stone. Chapter 31. Mom. There's an old picture, not the best quality, a little blurry, a little dim, and yellowed now. It's Mom and a 3-year-old me sitting on Grandma's couch in her TV room dining room. Mom and I are both wearing long, soft, baby pink nightgowns, and Mom actually has her arm around me. We were probably sleeping over at Grandma and Grandpa's that night because Dad was most likely away for a hockey tournament, and Mom didn't really like it much when Dad was away, especially at nighttime. I don't remember anything else about that visit, but I was thrilled, absolutely delighted that Mom and I were matching. I remember that. We both had pretty pink nightgowns. I'm smiling in the picture. I was so pleased. Mom is smiling a little bit. It's true. When Dad first met Mom's family, when they were newly dating, while Mom was out of the room, they all told Dad that Mom was no good and that he should leave her. It's also true that Dad bought Mom her first pair of glasses. She was extremely nearsighted, but too proud or ashamed to admit she couldn't see the movie they were watching when they were out on a date, and tried to say it was boring. There are only little scraps and pieces of what Mom told us about herself before she got married to Dad, because she seemed to be ashamed and embarrassed about her young self. She said she was a hood, which was probably short for hoodlum, and was 1960s speak for a bad kid or a juvenile delinquent. Mom said as much. She would often tell us abashedly that she was bad, and sensible, practical, logical, grown-up Mom could hardly fathom how or why she had been like that. Teen Mom teased her hair up into an impressive bubble coif, smoked, wore miniskirts, dark eye makeup, and put liquid makeup on her lips for that signature pale lip look of the times. She said that one year there was a noteworthy new boy in high school. He was from Toronto and had the Beatles' signature mop-top haircut instead of the small-town short and tidy cut. Mom and all the other girls thought he was pretty amazing. She liked to get French fries in a paper cone from a particular chip wagon, drown her fries in vinegar, and drink that vinegar from the cone when she was done. She got really flustered when she told us that for a little while she had been dating a much older guy, and when she broke it off with him, he rode over to her house one night on his motorcycle and stood outside calling, "Bougie! Bougie!" a variation on her nickname, Booge, to try to get her to come out. Mom was mortified, and her parents were furious. She got in a couple of terrible car accidents as a teen. The story went that Mom's friend, who was a little bit older, took her eyes off the road and asked Mom, "Want to see me hit 100?" That's miles per hour. The car went off the road, hit something, and rolled several times, knocking Mom literally out of her shoes. Mom's friend was ejected, and the car rolled over her, breaking her back. Meanwhile, Mom's brother and a buddy, while drinking at a bar, saw the ambulance fly past and decided to follow it to see what was up. At the accident site, my uncle was very surprised indeed to find Mom stumbling about on shattered glass, barefoot and in shock. Mom was very frightened of driving her whole life after that, and terrified whenever Dad had to merge onto the highway. We always thought Mom's flipping out was over the top when we were younger. I don't think we could really comprehend just how traumatized she had been. Teen Mom almost got to meet the Beatles. Mom's friend Benny's father had connections. The Beatles were playing in Toronto, and Mom was actually at the concert, and she and her friend were going to go backstage and meet the band. Unbelievable! But the crowd was so thick that Mom got separated from Benny, and the security guard didn't believe Mom when Mom said she was with them, pointing to Benny and her father, and wouldn't let Mom through. We had a running joke about that in our family and said that maybe it was for the best, because what if one of the Beatles fell in love with Mom and they got married? Then there'd have been none of us. Mom said at that concert the crowd was screaming so loudly you couldn't hear the Beatles at all. Before Mom became a teenage hood, she was a girl who devoured Cherry Ames' student nurse books and bugged her parents relentlessly to buy her some silly putty after seeing a commercial on TV. In the commercial, the kid hit the putty with a hammer and it exploded into hundreds of tiny putty balls. Mom finally wore Grandma and Grandpa down and they got her the putty. The first thing she did when she got it was to take it straight down the basement, put it on the workbench, and whack it with a hammer. It did indeed explode into hundreds of minute putty pieces, which scattered into all the dark corners of the dingy basement. Mom realized what had happened too late. No more putty. She was crushed. One time while her older sister was bent over vacuuming, Mom couldn't resist and pricked her bum with a pin. Her sister turned around and whacked Mom with the vacuum. Mom went to a Catholic elementary school, as did her siblings, and said that most of the nuns were horrible, but there was one who was younger and just lovely and kind. Young Mom sometimes had to kneel on rice at home as a punishment. As a kid, I never understood how that was a thing, but Mom insisted it felt pretty painful pretty fast. Grandma let young Mom come home after school and devour a gigantic bowl of cornflakes covered in sugar every day, but was furious when Mom wasn't able to finish her dinner. Young Mom had to go to Polish school on the weekends and wasn't a very big fan. Young Mom thought a boy was cute until he told her that he liked beans and wieners, and that random bit of information grossed Mom out and she didn't have a crush on him after that. Young Mom said there was a very odd girl who lived down the street, who asked Mom, as Mom was passing by one day, if she'd like to come over to her house to play paper dinks and poopadiddles. Mom said, no thanks, but was kind of disappointed years later and figured she should have gone just so she could have seen what exactly that game entailed. We made jokes for years after that about how maybe it was an origami thing. Young Mom said that when she was a kid, and if they got in trouble in her house, boy oh boy, Grandma and Grandpa were not stingy with the whacks. She also said that it seemed her parents never had anything good to say about her when she was growing up. Mom said that the Polish man, who was a boarder in their house while Grandpa was often away, still working in the gold mines up north, was mostly very nice to her, and Mom felt like he was more of a father figure in those years than her own father, who she didn't really know. He even bought her a little locket for one of her birthdays, but he also boxed her ears one time when she'd been bad. I've already said this, but when Brother and I were kids, Mom seemed to almost always be grouchy. I have some fuzzy memories of her hugging and kissing me when I was very little, but Mom didn't really do that as we got older. She seemed pretty uncomfortable with affection in general, and would groan and snort with disgust when our much snuggier, more demonstrative, and much mushier dad would say he loved us. For most of my life, I wasn't very comfortable with the social greeting hug. Mom was just always mad, or so it felt like. We were lazy. We were slobs. We never cleaned up after ourselves. We never put things away. "What is this?" Mom would ask, annoyed again as she gathered up a dirty mug for the dishes. "The house of mugs?" "What is this?" Mom would ask as she pulled loads of hair off the vacuum's beater bar. "The house of hair?" If you even attempted to talk back in the young years, Mom would get this look on her face. This scary, silent, wide-eyed look with a deadly slow turn of her head to fix you in her glare. "What did you say?" "Nothing. Nothing at all." Every single decision, it seemed, we tried to make as kids was questioned and ruled out as not the right one. Mom would second-guess us on everything. If we did ever try to stick to our guns, and our decision didn't turn out as well as we hoped, Mom would be rather pleased. To this day, Sister and I joke around about how much a freaking struggle it is to make a tough decision on something on our own, without someone else's input, and stick to it with confidence. I find myself doing it to my kids. "Are you sure you want to wear that coat? Should you wear this coat instead? Aren't you going to take your umbrella? Where's your hat? Don't get that. You won't like it." I work on this all the time. Mom was often screeching and hollering at us, but she didn't believe in spanking or hitting. That smack on the bum I got after drawing on so many things in the house was pretty much the only spank I can ever remember. Sister doesn't have these memories of Mom. Mom hugged her and kissed her much more often than Brother and I, and she even played with her with toys a bit when Sister was little. Mom was clearly smitten with little Sister Golden Hair. Sister was very clingy with Mom, and her deafness seemed to bring out some strong protectiveness in Mom. I don't recall Mom ever playing with me when I was little. I just didn't ask after a while. Mom was always busy. She seemed to craft the ultimate schedule for herself. She was always cleaning the house, or doing laundry, or putting away laundry, or ironing clothes, or making a labor-intensive dinner and a homemade dessert. Mom started having health problems when Sister was young. I was in my early teens when Mom started complaining that her feet would really hurt from time to time, and then her back really hurt. She had rheumatoid arthritis, the big bad arthritis. It ruined her feet and made her toes twist over top of one another and made it impossible eventually to ever wear pretty shoes again. The only kind of shoes Mom could take were running shoes or shoes made for people with terrible feet. It twisted and contorted her beautiful hands completely. Mom was embarrassed of her hands and tried not to make them obvious when she was out. She had to take extremely strong medications for her arthritis just so she could live her life. She was probably in some level of pain nearly all the time, but she rarely complained. This made my siblings and I grow up with little patience, unfortunately, for anyone who complained over lesser ailments, or for anyone who complained regularly about their ailments. Mom would lament sometimes how when she got dressed up and went out that she could never wear nice shoes like she used to. It made me feel sad, awkward, uncomfortable. It was terrible what she was living with. I didn't know what to say to make it better. Then she started to feel very run down and weak. Something was definitely not right. Mom, who knew all things medical, thought that she had ALS. She was forming plans in her mind of how to off herself if that diagnosis was confirmed. The doctor she saw didn't know exactly what was wrong, but Mom did her own digging and helped that doctor realize she had myasthenia gravis. Mom had her thymus gland removed. We went to visit her in the hospital. Mom had a hideous incision on her puffed out neck and looked the worst shade of gray ever. Brother, sister, and I were silently freaking out. Mom was kind of bummed by our reaction. By the time we'd come to visit, she thought she was looking pretty good. At some point before Mom was diagnosed with arthritis, Mom had a huge ovarian cyst. It was as big as a small watermelon by the time they removed it, and made it impossible for her to sleep in her favorite sleeping position on her stomach. It made her look pregnant. She had that removed, and they wanted to do a hysterectomy, but her uterus had fused to her pelvic wall and they had to leave it in. They surmised this was from years of endometriosis. Young Sister did particularly poorly seeing her mother and her human security blanket with all these horrifying health issues, and spiraled into years and years of massive health anxiety. Mine was yet to rear its ugly head. Nothing seemed to stop Mom, though. She still managed to clean that house from top to bottom without fail and make those nice dinners. She had to wear running shoes pretty much all the time during the day, or her feet hurt too much, but she rarely complained, and she just seemed to deal with everything. She was the most stoic person I knew. Things improved greatly in our relationship as I got older, and especially after I moved out. Maybe the pressure of actively mothering kids and worrying about us was too much, and when we moved out, she was very sad, but it took a lot of the pressure off. I loved Mom so much. I could call her for her knowledge and reassurance about any medical problem. We would talk on the phone for hours. She taught me how to hem pants and how to cook many things. She was wonderful for practical advice, and she loved the grandkids. She loved babies so damn much. It was a treat for her when she got to change one of the grandkids' diapers. She was my best friend, and I missed her so very much in those years that I lived away from my family. In 2009, I was moving back home. Mom fretted so much about the house and anything else you could think of, but she was very happy I was moving back. We loved to go shopping together. Mom and I could shop until that store closed, just going through those racks of clothes and saying, "Look at this! Isn't this cute? Oh, this is cute. This would look really cute on you." I would make dinners in my new home and invite my parents over, and Mom was always so appreciative of anything I cooked, so interested in the recipes I would come up with. We'd get takeout pizza with them and always have such a fun night. Sometimes I would walk over to my parents and have dinner with them. It was just great. That New Year's Eve, I had my whole family over and we had the best, the funniest, the most fun party. I was so happy to be back in town with my whole family again. Things were really looking up. At the end of the summer, just before I moved back, Mom had a health scare. She had been having lots of problems with heart palpitations. She could handle a lot, but those were really starting to get to her. Then one day, her heart started racing and it wouldn't stop. She had to go to the hospital. They were doing everything to get that heart to slow down, but nothing seemed to be working. Finally, they got it back into a normal rhythm. Mom called me on the phone. She was trying to make a joke. "Looks like, unfortunately for you, I'll be around a little longer." I burst into tears. Mom felt bad and reassured me she was okay. There was a series of specialist appointments after that. Mom had a hole in her lung. Mom had spots on her lung. They biopsied one of those spots. It wasn't cancer. Mom had a brain tumor. It looked like it was benign. Mom had a cough that wouldn't go away. It was so pesky and disruptive and persistent, she had to carry cough lozenges with her at all times. The specialist, he just insisted she had an infection and needed to take antibiotics longer than the usual course to close up that hole. Every single new symptom she had only pointed to one thing. I know this because I Googled it at some point after Mom's diagnosis. In winter 2010, after that amazing New Year's Eve party, Mom and Dad babysat my kids for me so Hubs and I could go out one time. The kids had gotten over the stomach flu, or we thought they were over it, but my parents seemed to catch their bug. Dad threw up, but Mom just felt nauseous and rotten. She had a fever. Then she kept getting fevers. Then she had a hard lump on the side of her neck. She didn't feel well. She just seemed to get worse and worse, but the doctors could never seem to find anything. She told me on the phone one time that she could feel herself slipping away, and it frightened her. I was horrified, but like an idiot, I just tried to tell her that if the doctors couldn't find anything, she would get better. I just said that reassuring bullshit we like to toss out when people we love are struggling. Mom was very stoic. She would do her best to keep going through anything. It was only as she got older that she didn't seem to be able to be stoic any longer. When Dad's mom went into a home, that made Mom cry. When Dad's brother got Parkinson's, that upset Mom terribly. When Grandma died, that ruined Mom. I put my arm around Mom in the back seat of the car on the way from the church to the cemetery, and I didn't let her go. I didn't care that we weren't a physical family, that we weren't huggy. I didn't care. Mom was so distraught after Grandma died. She couldn't really even talk about it without her eyes filling up with tears. This was like totally foreign to us. Mom didn't even shed a tear at her father's funeral in the 80s. Mom was hardcore. Mom did not. I repeat, Mom did not cry. Mom was the epitome of stoic. So when that day came and Mom decided she had to go to the hospital, Mom must have felt very, very unwell indeed. The first few days we just scrambled to adjust to what was going on. We visited Mom and tried to keep her spirits up, and we were certain that it was just a lung infection, like that idiot had said. But then that hospital doctor came in one day and was shocked that nobody had told her what was really going on. So he did. It wasn't a lung infection. It was stage 4 lung cancer, and she was dying. She was going to die. There was nothing they could do about it, and it was going to be soon. 2 weeks. Mom was in the hospital about 2 weeks. She got moved into palliative care. "They're putting me in the checkout room," Mom said grimly. "No," I said. "They just want us all to have more space for visiting. Isn't that nice of them?" Mom was basically gone after that doctor told her the real deal. She had emotionally checked out. She took all her remaining strength and courage, and she willed herself with determination to her ending. You couldn't really even talk to her anymore. She wasn't there. She was busy trying to die as quickly as possible. I turned 38 while Mom was in the hospital. Brother, bless his heart, tried to lighten the mood in the room. It's somebody's birthday today. Mom's eyes filled with tears and she turned her head to the side away from us. She said nothing. We got the call from the nurse on a Sunday morning. We'd better come in. Dad was already there. He was basically living in that room with Mom once she got moved into the palliative care room. He wouldn't leave her side. For a long time, I was disgusted whenever I'd see a smoker. In those last hours, Mom had pain that no painkillers could touch. She vomited green, brown liquid and moaned in her bed, rubbing her chest under her neck. Still to this day, if I ever catch myself rubbing that spot, I stop immediately. We had been there for hours, and I can't remember why, but my siblings and I left to go get something to eat. Sister had gone out and gotten us subs. Very good subs, like Mom made with the Italian cold cuts, cheese, and homemade Italian dressing on the lettuce. We were sitting in a mostly empty hospital lunchroom, where I guess we'd missed lunch because the kitchen was locked up. We were sitting there, making jokes, probably because that's what you do in surreal, unbelievably stressful situations, and eating our subs. Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty was playing on a radio. That's when Mom died. She died with Dad and her oldest sister in the room. She waited until we left, probably so we didn't have to see it, and that's when she died. Our mother, dead at 59. What do you do after these things happen? You just gather up your things, pathetically, and Mom and Dad's pillows, and you shove all the personal stuff into bags the hospital staff give you, and you go. Dad wouldn't leave. We walked across the parking lot together and Sister left. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny spring day. Brother and I hugged each other. We both agreed that we were so glad that Dad was still here. One of us said, "I think Dad's going to be around for a long time." The other replied, "I think so too." Dad would be gone in 4 years. In our old family photo albums, there was only ever one photo of our sister who died. It's 1970. Mom is sitting on a lawn chair by the wall of our house near the back door. 3-year-old, very blonde brother is standing at Mom's right. In Mom's left hand, arm casually draped over her leg, is a cigarette. In Mom's right arm is a little baby, asleep, wearing a terry cloth sleeper, just a hint of reddish hair on her head. Mom is wearing pointy glasses, stylish at that time, smiling, and her hair is cut very short. She's wearing denim shorts and a t-shirt. Brother is wearing shorts and a blue t-shirt with a white trimmed round neckline. They're both squinting because for some reason Dad always faced us directly into the sun whenever he took pictures. Mom looks happy in that pic. Dad was happy. He had gotten a job at the fire department after being on strike at the automotive factory and trying desperately to make money on the side at one of the local wineries. They'd recently moved out of Dad's parents' basement into their first home. They now had a little boy and a little girl. It was Dad's oldest sister who realized something wasn't right with the baby. They took her to the doctor and then for tests. She was born with a hole in her heart. She lived just about a year and died in the hospital for children in Toronto. Brother and I didn't get it. We had no idea of just how horrible that all must have been. In the spring and summer when we were little, we had to go to the cemetery while Mom planted flowers on the grave or watered the flowers she had planted. We thought the cemetery was an arid, sun-baked, hot, boring desert, and we tried to amuse ourselves while Mom did her boring gardening and hoped we could go home soon and run through the sprinkler or play with the hose. I had no concept of this baby or this sister I had never met. Brother had a very faint memory of her and times when Mom and Dad had to go to the hospital. Nanny bought him a toy train during that from the hospital gift shop. For the longest time as a kid, I thought, yes, sure, it was sad. Of course it was sad that we had a sister and she died, but I figured, in total little kid naivety, that surely it had to be less sad because she was a baby, and I didn't think of babies as significant humans yet. How do I explain this? I thought that babies only slept, ate, and cried, and that they were, well, just babies. I thought that they didn't really communicate because they didn't talk, and I didn't know that they have distinctive personalities. I didn't realize that my sister had lived for almost a year. I thought that my parents and mom wouldn't have really had enough time to even get to know her, so it surely couldn't have been too tragic. As I got older and older, I realized how oblivious I had been. And when I had my own children, I realized how profoundly wrong I had been as a kid. All those milestones a baby achieves in a year, smiling, laughing, rolling over, sitting up, eating food, crawling, maybe even walking, maybe starting to talk. My God! To imagine as a naive little kid that a baby was little more than a plastic doll. More and more it started to hit me just how completely, devastatingly sad that truly was. And then one day, within just the past few years, I was driving along, and it all hit me like a ton of bricks. Mom lost her baby. Mom was 20 when she lost her baby. I was 20 when my boyfriend died. I was ruined for years after that. Years! That must have destroyed poor Mom. My God! I can only imagine. I loved my children the moment I felt I was pregnant. Mom lost her little baby. Mom wasn't even able to be at the hospital when she died. Mom had to get a phone call to say she had died while Dad was at work. Mom had to phone Dad at work and tell him that their baby had died. All those years that Mom was grouchy. All those years that Mom was angry and annoyed and impatient and snarky and sarcastic and intolerant. All those years that Mom would get annoyed with us when we were sick and seemed to desperately want us to just say we felt fine as soon as possible again. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I simply thought you were miserable all the time and not very nice. You tried to tuck that grief away and keep going. I'm so sorry that I never understood that until after your death. I understand now, Mom. I forgive you, and I love you, and I understand.